Thank you all for joining us for the Skills That Shine, Translating Your Talents for Diverse Careers workshop. Joining us today is Alisa Gardner, Director, Leadership and Professional Development Academy. She's the one that runs the Grad Academy. She's going to be discussing how to frame your skills in resumes, interviews, and networking conversations to stand out to employers in a variety of fields. So I will now hand over to her to get us started. Thank you, Alisa.
Thank you, Ayola. I'm going to go ahead and grab the screen. Awesome. Well, glad to be here with you all. I'm not usually on this side of the workshops, but this is a topic that's really important to me and it is my wheelhouse. So I know I've worked with a number of you in different capacities, but you might not know, where I come from in my background. And I do have over 15 years working in professional development in different capacities. And that involved, both creating, designing trainings and events and the sort of things you're more familiar with, but I've also done a lot of hiring. So I've served on a lot of committees here at UNLV, but before that, in my previous career, I did a lot of hiring as well. And I've conducted over 1,000 interviews in my career for a lot of different kinds of positions. And through that experience, this kind of topic is really interesting to me. So I'm excited to be with you all today and share a little bit about how you can take the skills that you are learning as graduate students and translate those into what we know employers are looking for today. Okay, so for the workshop, I'll say it's going to be really interactive. We're going to do some activities. We are going to dig into what career competencies, as they're called, or durable skills employees are currently looking, or employers are currently looking for. We're going to practice identifying those based on your experiences as graduate students. Then we're going to get into talking about how to communicate these effectively on CVs and resumes in interviews. And then we'll tie it up with a little reflection, and then I will share a whole bunch of resources with you all to take this further, because this is really just going to be an introduction to what this all looks like. And our goals for today are to identify those transferable skills that you have gained as graduate students, so you continue to gain, connect your graduate student experiences to the career-ready competencies and durable skills, and to practice communicating those skills. So like I mentioned, it's going to be interactive. I welcome questions at any point. Please feel welcome to interrupt me. I shouldn't be offended. But we're gonna continue with the conversation. So if you are a Simon Sinek fan like I am, I always go to this start with the why, right? So why does this matter? And I just want to share a little anecdote to begin that really has me thinking about all of these transferable, durable, soft skills. So I attended a conference in early October for the Nevada System of Higher Education, and it was all about mentorship, and it was primarily about mentorship and research, talking about how advisors mentor students, how we can support those kind of relationships, and how we can help facilitate growth in those relationships. But a part of that, of course, is talking about the job market and what employers are looking for in their researchers, whether in academia or industry, after they emerge out of graduate school. And one of the facilitators was up in the front of the room, like the facilitator of the overall conference, and he was introducing a topic around this. And he said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something along the lines of, employers think that our students do not gain the durable and soft skills that they need them to have while they're in school. And he said, I really beg to differ. And that so resonated with me because I do too. I think that you are getting these skills, whether it's through your academic programs, through these external programmings that we offer through the Grad Academy or career services, the libraries, the Writing Center, all these resources. I think that you are getting these skills. It's just about how do you convey them and communicate them effectively to employers? How do you tie what you're doing with your graduate degree to what the workplace and those hiring, what we know that they desire, both in academic and industry settings? So why does this matter now? I don't think it's any secret to anybody that we're in, as the quote here says, we're in a really tough job market. There are mixed public perceptions about the value of higher education, and we really need you all to be advocates for it, right? We need you sharing the story of how your graduate degree is valuable and how it's going to contribute to the greater workforce. Because it is, and you need these skills to advance, right? So we know that employers are increasingly prioritizing skills over titles. And we know that while your degree signals ability, definitely signals determination, resilience, right? Your skills are what tells the story of how you got there. So that is really the key point here today. And my key message is for you all before we dive in, is that success really depends not just on your credentials, but how you communicate the skills behind them. So before I dig into what the literature says about these career competencies and durable skills, I'm going to put out a question to you all, and you can unmute, or I'd love you to type it in the chat. But in your opinion, or what you've learned, what skills do you think that employers value most today? I'll just take a moment. Communication, 100%. Soft skills, social skills, absolutely. Adaptability, customer service, totally, that's a good one. And self-starters, yes, that self-efficacy piece. Absolutely. Okay, so you guys are really on the right track. Problem solving, absolutely. Critical thinking, proactive mindset, absolutely. Okay, these are all really in line with what we're about to talk about. Okay, so I'm gonna reference two bodies of literature today in terms of identifying what these skills are. So the first one is NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers Career Readiness Competencies. We use these a ton in Grad Academy programming. So whether you know it or not, it's tied, they're tied to our pillars that we have as our foundation, and we try to kind of think from these lenses as we build our programming out. These terms are broad. You might think, oh, these are pretty straightforward. I have an idea of what these means. And that's true. But the main ones are critical thinking, communication, teamwork and collaboration, equity and inclusion, leadership, professionalism, career and self-development, and technology use. So NACE came to these identified competencies after a decade-long study. They were interviewing employers, surveying employers, doing all sorts of data analysis and robust reporting to try and come up with this list, which was republished, like updated and republished in 2024. So this is the existing list. And I'm going to go into what these mean according to NACE. So their definitions: career and self-development. Proactively develop oneself and one's career through continual personal and professional learning, awareness of one's strengths and weaknesses, navigation of career opportunities, and networking to build relationships within and without one's organization. By communication, their definition is clearly and effectively exchange information, ideas, facts, and perspectives with persons inside and outside of an organization. By critical thinking, they mean identify and respond to needs based on understanding of situational context and logical analysis of relevant information. By equity and inclusion, they mean demonstrate the awareness, attitude, knowledge, and skills required to equitably engage and include people from across different cultures and backgrounds. By leadership, they mean recognize and capitalize on personal and team strengths to achieve organizational goals. They define professionalism as knowing work environments differ greatly, understanding and demonstrating effective work habits, and acting in the interests of larger community and workplace. Teamwork means that you're building and maintaining collaborative relationships to work effectively towards common goals while appreciating diverse viewpoints and shared responsibilities. And technology means that you understand and leverage technologies ethically to enhance efficiencies, complete tasks, and accomplish goals. Now, I've linked the full report in some resources that I'm going to share with you all as well, because they really break these down a lot further and call out specific skills under these broader definitions. So you can explore that further if you like. But that gives you an idea of what they mean by these core competencies. But there's a lot of other literature out there about soft skills and durable skills. So I'm going to call to attention one other one, a slightly different perspective. This is from the Skills Economy Insights report as delivered by the Chronicle of Higher Education. So these are what they identified as the key things that students, should be developing higher education that are going to be valuable to them after their experience. Flexibility and agility, the ability to adapt quickly to changing conditions, shifting priorities, and unexpected tasks, respond proactively. Project ownership. So this can be a tricky one as a student if you're working under an advisor, if you're working in a group, but thinking about the areas in which you took full responsibility for a project from planning to execution. So you took the initiative, you were accountability for seeing the project through, and that you were really personally invested in the outcomes. Another one that they identify is digital communication. So pretty straightforward. How do we do things like use Zoom, Slack, Teams, social media, things like that to be able to function within a workplace? Problem solving, identifying, analyzing, and responding to complex, ambiguous challenges by generating options, choosing that path. The idea is moving from what's happening to what can I do about it? And then that lifelong learning mindset. So continuously acquiring new skills, updating your knowledge, reflecting on experiences, being proactive, and everything like that. So next we are going to get into communicating these skills a little bit more. So I want to start with, how do we do this on CVs and resumes? How do you communicate durable or soft skills? Because you don't list them. There's not a specific section to put them in, or you shouldn't be putting things like durable skills on your skills list. These are different, but you still need to be really strategic about how you use it. So first, you hear time and again that you always want to customize your CV or resume to the job. And of course, that is the case. But that is really applicable when you're strategizing where to include your durable and soft skills. So reviewing the job posting and all of the language there, and then jumping on to that employer website and looking at their mission and values. These are going to be key kind of clues for how you want to describe your own self. What skills do they want for the role? So how not only looking at the job posting for the specific credentials listed, but what kind of person are they looking for? Do they use the word collaborative a lot? Do they use strong communicator a lot? And then taking that into how you apply those words on your resume. Same for the employer mission and values. What skills do you think the employer would value most, right? What's going to align from the pool of what you have that you can then translate to them? Okay, so again, we're avoiding our list of durable or soft skills, but we are instead integrating it into different areas of your resume, and you're using action verbs to tell the story. So this is where you get all these wonderful action verbs. You can find lists of these in LinkedIn, Indeed. There's a ton of resources out here, but a few examples are facilitated, led, collaborated, designed, streamlined, analyzed, mentored, presented, negotiated, adapted. You're putting the skills right in how you describe what you are doing. And just like Rebel Grad Slam last week, for those who might have been involved with that, you need to translate jargon depending on the position or industry you're going into. So this is very specific to the role you are pursuing, because if you are pursuing an advanced very specific research position, then it's okay to use that jargon, right? But if you want to be pursuing a role that is a little tangential to your field, or where you don't see those specific things requested in the job posting, you want to translate it for a broader audience to understand. So the example here, you have a bullet under a position where you say conducted ethnographic research. You could change that into led interviews and then synthesize insights. So playing with that language to get your message across, demonstrate those skills, but also showing that you're aware of the kind of position and the industry that you're applying in. And then lastly, even though we're talking about durable and soft skills, you still want to include quantifiable or outcome evidence wherever possible. And the example here, delivered over 20 guest lectures across 5 semesters, improving student engagement scores by 15%. So we've got the numbers in there, right? We've got the concrete evidence, but what that line demonstrates is that you're doing communication, right? You're delivering the lectures, you're teaching, you're adaptable because you did this across 5 semesters. So changes obviously would be occurring throughout that time. And then you're also showing analysis and reflection because you're tracking the improvement and how the students are engaging. So again, it comes down to being really strategic about the phrasing that you use and thinking about, what do I want the employer to gather from this line about what I can do? So where does this go on a resume? I said it doesn't go in your skills list, right? Primarily, it's going to go right in those experience bullets as we were just talking about, using the action verbs to describe how you do the different kind of things that you do in your work. If it's appropriate to have a summary or a profile section on your resume, which again varies by industry and varies by type of resume or CV. So like it's not typical in academic CVs necessarily anymore to have a summary or profile section. But if you do have one, that's another place where you could share these skills, as well as say the summary or about you section in LinkedIn. And you might say something like collaborative researcher with a record of mentoring undergraduate students and managing multi-phase projects, right? And then the other place where you might be showing these skills would be in an achievement section or a leadership and service section. This is where you're highlighting things like your community or your committee work, your community engagement, and your outreach. But again, even in this section, it's integrating those action words to really demonstrate the skill itself. Okay, so beyond CVs and resumes, these are skills that always, without, any doubt in my mind, come up in interviews. So we know those beloved interview questions that are behavioral, right? So tell me about a time you faced a significant challenge at work. Describe a situation where you had to adapt to a major change. Tell me about a time when you worked as a part of a team to successfully execute a project. I pulled some common examples here, but there are so many of these. And if you've ever interviewed for a job or a position or a Grad Rebel ambassador role, you get these kind of questions. And the idea is oftentimes an employer can see right from your CV and resume if you have the hard skills that are needed for that role. But in the interview, they want to get to know you and they want to get to know what kind of worker you are, what kind of person you are. And that is how you share your durable and soft skills through these behavioral interview questions. So I'm going to share a method for how to respond to these questions, and that is called the STAR method. The definition of STAR method that I'm sharing here is from MIT Career Advising and Professional Development. So you have this resource to explore further if you would like as well. But the STAR method is the approach to answering specifically behavioral questions in order to demonstrate your durable soft skills and competencies. STAR is an acronym. It stands for situation, task, action, result. Situation means this is where you explain the situation, give a little context so that your interviewer understands your example, but you don't have to share every single detail. Remember, for interviews, behavioral questions, you have 2 to 3 minutes max usually to answer these, right? So this is why you want to frame these responses ahead of time. The task is talk about the specific task or the goal of your efforts. The action, this is the biggest part of the STAR, bubble. This is the part you really want to emphasize is action. This is where you show your skills. Describe the actions that you personally took to complete the task or reach the end goal. Highlight skills or character traits addressed in the question. And then you get to the result. This is where you explain the positive outcome, the results generated by your actions. This is where you can put in some quantifiable stuff, thinking about what did you learn from the experience and what were your key takeaways. So what does this look like? I'm going to share an example. So the interview prompt in this example is, tell me about a time you faced a significant challenge at work or school. So breaking it down by situation, task, action, result. In the situation, this person starts out with the response, in my graduate research project, we were running a complex data analysis that suddenly produced inconsistent results 2 weeks before our presentation. Okay, so now we know the issue. This is the context, right? What was the task? I needed to identify the cause and correct it quickly without delaying our timeline. So what action did they take? I retraced each step of the data pipeline, discovered a coding error in how missing values were handled, and collaborated with a peer to rerun all analyses overnight. And then wrapping it up, tying it up into a nice little story. We met our deadline, presented accurate findings, and the professor later used our data set as a model example for the next cohort. So in responding this way using the STAR method, right away, I could pull out many, many skills, but the first ones that I listed here was critical thinking, right? They described a complex data analysis problem that was sudden. So you had to jump into critical thinking mode to navigate that. Professionalism. So they talked about, how they approached going into it, how they collaborated with their peers in order to get the action that was needed and get to the results they were hoping for. So collaboration, of course, is there as well. And then problem solving. There are a lot more in here that you could probably identify as well, but that's just one specific example. So again, these behavioral interview questions are really the best place to demonstrate your skills in an interview. So after today's session, what is one skill you feel more confident communicating or feel more ready to approach and plan to highlight more intentionally in professional settings? Thank you all so much. So a few takeaways, I just want to emphasize again, like I said at the beginning with my little conference anecdote, you have these skills that employers need. You do. It's just how do you communicate them? Translate them into clear, compelling language, right? And ultimately, practicing, exploring resources is what you can do to help you feel more confident. So I'm going to end with that. I'm going to share this list of resources, which again, you all have access to in our shared document here if you want to explore them further. So a full detail of the NACE competencies for career-ready workforce. This will dig much deeper into that, and there's some additional info there as well. I linked the Chronicle of Higher Education, How College Can Thrive in the Skills Economy. That article is more directed at administrative folks like me, but it still highlights, what kind of skills that you can pull out of higher education. You have the activity table that we used. You can refer back to that. You can build on that, make your own copy if it's helpful. Reference that digs much deeper into that STAR method for your next behavioral interview. There's also a STAR method practice sheet. So if you really want to prepare your questions in advance, you can lay them out according to the situation, task, action, and result using this sheet. And then also just wanted to highlight, of course, our career services team. So Career services is a bit underutilized by graduate students, if I'm being honest, right? The emphasis is more undergraduate students, but they do have resources specifically for graduate students. So I linked to that page and some things that you can do with them. This isn't the full picture, but you can schedule coaching. You can have them take a look through your CV or resume and review it. They provide networking opportunities, and they can help you through different stages of this process. I also included the Standout Virtual Interview Practice link there. So with that platform, you can go in, you can record yourself responding to interview questions. You can choose from different interview practice sets. So you can specifically choose behavioral questions. If you want to practice applying that STAR method and going through it some more, and then you can get live AI feedback from those recordings there too. And then lastly, I shared the High Five Strengths Assessment. So if you're in any of our certificate programs, we use this sometimes as a part of programming. And what it is a free strengths assessment. There are tons out there, of course, that you can use, some that you have to pay for, some you don't, but this is a solid free one that you can access today to really help you identify what your strengths are, right? What your inherent strengths are, and then using that information to again help communicate the skills that you have tied to those strengths going forward. So that is it for me. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you once again, and then we'll see you in our next workshop.